This video is brought to you by Squarespace. I never really got the hate for the first Angry Birds movie. It came out so many years after the height of the game's success, and everybody's kinda just forgotten about it at that point. Was there really that much of a reason to get angry at it? It was your standard 2016 CG animated feature like Secret Life of Pets or Storks, or as most people like to compare it to Ratchet and Clank, but that's only because it was the other video game movie that came out that year. Aside from that, these two couldn't have been more different. Angry Birds actually seemed to have cared about making a somewhat entertaining product. It had a few cringy lines and some running gags were obnoxious, but everything else from the character designs that did a great job at combining the simplistic sprites from the games into a 3D yet still cartoony environment over the voice acting and characters was at least able to hold my attention. It's been a few years since I first saw that film, and my desire to replay Angry Birds hasn't much increased since, but Sony's likely hoping for you to do that, because this month saw the release of Angry Birds 2, A Case of the Feather Flu.
But I know growing magic. I could have grown your feathers back 2 months ago.
What?! And since it's currently relevant, I'd rather not discuss this whole Sony/Disney ordeal. Let's just all agree that The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is the greatest superhero movie ever made, and Into the Spider-Verse very obviously solidified their animation studio as more than capable. It's just the question of what basket you want to put your eggs into. They did also fund the Emoji Movie, so you never know. Looking at this cast alone turned me into a bit of an angry bird myself. You know what I'm saying? Like David Dobrik, JoJo's Bizarre Speech Pattern, Lil Nicki Minaj, and a single smosh. I swear the only reason I even went and saw this film was for Flapjack creator Thorup Van Orman, who was the director for this film, which I don't know how that happened. This was his first ever directing gig on an animated movie, just like its co-director John Rice. But since there's not exactly any intricate lore to pay mind to when adapting an Angry Birds sequel, I was excited to see the film go in a more surreal direction. Like you would expect from the guy that brought you this.
You need to grow up!
Grow up? I'm 38 years old!
The movie this time shifts the focus away from the conflict between birds and pigs and toward a new villain threatening to destroy both their islands, to turn them into a tropical resort, causing the two sides to join forces. So we see characters like Bill Hader Pig and Josh Gad as Josh Gad setting out on an epic quest that has even less to do with the actual mobile game than the first film, but much stronger focus on strengthening the bond between these characters. With the addition of a love interest for Red, because of course there would be one. We get some fun interactions between them and other side characters who've essentially replaced most of the ones from Angry Birds 1. So the cast gels together much better and they never outstay their welcome. Also thanks to the additional storyline with the baby birds they've added, which never felt like it was breaking the pace. But that doesn't mean some running gags weren't still prevalent and as annoying as ever. And when the film wanted to be juvenile, it sometimes went overboard with it, but especially moments like the one bathroom scene show just how much better the pacing was in this film. I'll take the occasional pig snot bath or dabbing reference, even if it's in the first minute, if it leads up to something clever, which it usually did. Even the dance numbers, of which there were just as many of, and I swear there were moments where like 4 pop songs were played in succession. So those were still there, but played up for a laugh, and they seemed much more aware of how dumb they were. Like the humor was much less dumb in this one. Some jokes legit made me laugh, like one gag where Bomb said he would take out the enemies, but it turned out he actually took them out for a drink. The dumb puns, but the setup to these jokes was really good at times. As was the villain's backstory. She seemed like the perfect fit thanks to her over-the-top attitude and great voice performance by not Beyonce, even though they clearly wanted to get her since they referenced her like 3 times. Chuck's sister, Webby from DuckTales, was another character I really enjoyed. She was portrayed as this loony, BuzzFeed listicle obsessed scientist, but ended up becoming my favorite character thanks to her sarcastic demeanor and having Silver the Hedgehog as a namesake.
It's no use!
She ended up carrying the whole film in the second half. The way she and some of the other characters moved around the screen was just mesmerizing. I already thought the animation was good in the first film, but all the characters' movements here really make them stand out as very unique. Like during one scene where they all dress up in costume to try and sneak into the evil lair. The movement is often quick and erratic, but never to where it feels artificial. The first film was much more concerned with keeping kids' attention spans, while this one has a few somber moments that worked well. Even the ending tied the side plot that was going on into the main conflict very nicely, though there were definitely some contrivances along the way, like how everyone suddenly stopped remembering red whenever you went to speed dating, which in hindsight wasn't the most necessary plotline either, but it did help us get silver and a nice joke about resting bird face. Yeah, this movie's gonna be dated in a year, but what did you expect? It's Angry Birds. The bar for video game movies has become so low that whenever a decent film like Detective Pikachu comes out, it tends to get praised to hell and back just for not making you want to leave the theater 10 minutes in. So I wasn't exactly surprised to see this one being described as the best video game movie ever, but it does make me wonder why the first one never got the same treatment. This one's better in most every way, like the character movements, scenery, dialogue, sound design, but it's not like the first one was ever that bad. If you want to really praise this movie for something, it's that it never feels like you're actually watching a movie based on Angry Birds, much less one for kids. It rarely ever fell back on toilet humor or cliche references to the extent the first one did, which in return allows the other elements to stick out much more positively too. I'd still say that if you weren't into the first Angry Birds movie, you're likely not going to get too much enjoyment out of this, but if you're even remotely interested in a silly kids comedy with some decent gags and birds that barely even get angry, then go check it out. I'll be waiting on the Doodle Jump movie in the meantime. Speaking of Squarespace! You know what makes me angry? Seeing people with less than decent websites. But guess what? Squarespace can help you stand above those fools and create a website sure to make your friends go, "Dude, you made this on Squarespace, don't lie to us." But that's just cause they're jealous, because with Squarespace you get it all. Slick design, easy to use templates, and no need for additional installation to use any of it. You don't even need to know anything about web design, as it's extremely easy to use and allows for the import of any form of media you want to make the site feel personal and unique. You can set up a site for free right now when you go to squarespace.com/Cosmodore, and when you're happy with it, just use my code Cosmodore to get 10% off your first purchase of your first domain, which you can acquire directly from Squarespace itself, with no surprise charges after the fact. Just head over to squarespace.com/Cosmodore and use Cosmodore for 10% off your first purchase.
Rather than being on me, as you suggested, this cake is on you!